Before we had a technical problem and a break, many South Africans looking for investment options abroad. Not too far from home, the little island of Mauritius is becoming something of an economic powerhouse. We're joined again by Sovereign Trust SA chairperson Tim Mertens from Seapoint. Tim, we can now hear you. Just tell us where the Mauritian economy has come from and where it is right now.
Well, as you said earlier, I mean, it was a relatively small economy, and it's grown to something which is fairly significant given that it's only a small population, 1.3 million people. But the economy last year had impressive growth of 4%. I think this year it's 3.7%. So, you know, it punches above its weight as a small economy in the region. It's attracted a lot of business over the years. I think something in the region of almost 20,000 businesses now have set up using Mauritius structures as a springboard to conduct business not only in Mauritius but elsewhere. And you know, within those structures, I'm told that there are something in the order of $660 billion worth of investment. So, you know, relatively good as a jurisdiction in terms of attracting investment.
Has it been better than South Africa in terms of being that gateway that we wanted to be?
I would say so, because, you know, a lot of foreign funds and a lot of foreign investors who look at Africa as a continent of a lot of opportunity, of course, which it is, they want a stable jurisdiction which provides ease of doing business. You mentioned the World Bank mentioning and rating Mauritius as number one in terms of doing business there. And it is a very easy place to do business. And it's a very good springboard given the double taxation and other arrangements that Mauritius has with a variety of different African countries, making it not only safe for investors through investment protection agreements, but double taxation agreements and other initiatives, you know, making it a good springboard into Africa and indeed elsewhere.
Is a lot of the investment in Mauritius about the tax breaks? And is that right? You know, there's a lot of debate around tax havens, this race to the bottom, depriving a lot of poor people around the world of tax funds, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is a hot debate, and I think a lot of these jurisdictions have moved on from that. And certainly, I think the important point to note is that these jurisdictions shouldn't be used really for tax activities that are tax driven. So, you know, they should be used basically because of the ease of doing business, maybe their geographical location and the ease of, you know, investment into other countries which that particular jurisdiction has treaties and other arrangements with. So it shouldn't only be tax driven, but the reality is that a place like Mauritius does provide fairly good tax breaks for companies and individuals who want to invest into Mauritius or through Mauritius entities. And, you know, that is attractive to people where onshore, you know, tax rates are much higher.
How many South Africans are taking up the opportunity? What are the opportunities there?
Well, I mean, there are a variety of different ways of looking at the jurisdiction. If you want to do business in other parts of the world and you want to use Mauritius as a springboard, for example, into Africa, then, you know, a lot of people set up Mauritian companies, for example, and they are good structures. They're not the only sorts of structures. There are other jurisdictions, but jurisdictions like that are good from the point of view of being a springboard into other areas. But also some South Africans are setting up domestic companies and are investing into Mauritius itself, into the Mauritius economy. And then there are various categories of residency permit and occupational permit, which enable people for relatively small amounts of money comparatively to set up business in Mauritius and even take up residency in Mauritius. So they've really opened up the economy to you know, to foreigners, and they're trying to attract, you know, people with skills and with money to come and invest on the island. So, yeah, there's a real charm offensive, if you like, by the authorities. You know, that is really very interesting at the moment.
And finally, just for an individual, maybe a relatively wealthy individual, thinking, where should I put my retirement funds? Is offshore really the place to be? A lot of it, some would say, is actually currency speculation. It all depends what the rand does and what that currency does, and you could get it horribly wrong.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, you've got to get proper advice. But I think that where a lot of people are coming from is that, you know, if you have all your eggs in one basket, if you have all your assets in rands, then, you know, if the rand fluctuates and is under pressure, as we've seen over the last few years, then, you know, your retirement pot can effectively be eroded. So it's always a good idea to get good advice and consider putting assets into another currency, perhaps a more stable currency like dollars or euros or pounds, and really have an offshore estate which is obviously legally set up, which is tax efficient, and which can then give you perhaps some stability which you're not always going to get onshore, you know, in a country like South Africa, sadly, I have to say.
All right, thank you very much. Very interesting. Maybe we'll chat to you again. There are a lot of offshore little islands being used, some of them by South Africans. That was the chairman of Sovereign Trust South Africa, Tim Mertens.